Thanks for joining me. I'm glad you're here. My name is Jerrel. This is Sungrand, the channel where we can talk about games, game development, and whatever cool hobbies that we're interested in. Today we're going to look at Elden Ring Tarnished Edition for the Switch 2. This is the trailer that recently went live on Nintendo's YouTube channel. Now, very quickly, there's something I noticed that YouTubers do is sometimes they'll say things wrong on purpose. Like they'll say a word wrong, and I think it's to sort of rage bait people to make them engaged in the comments. That's not something that I want to do. I'm not aiming to be a YouTuber. I'm just here to hang out with you guys. I'm a game developer. That's how I make my living. So we're going to take a look at Elden Ring Tarnished Edition for the Switch 2. I'm going to go ahead and shrink myself down, and we'll look at the trailer here for... I wonder what's tarnished about this edition. Okay, you might need to ask your parents before you proceed with the rest of this video because it's rated M17. There is blood and gore. There's language, suggestive themes. What are they suggesting? So to start out, we have CGI here. This is pre-rendered. This isn't gameplay. We have these nice cinematic bars that make you feel like you're in a movie, I suppose. I'm not sure what this symbol means. I've actually never played Elden Ring, so if I pick up the Tarnished Edition, that'll be the first experience I have with the game. I don't know anything about this, but these people certainly look somber. I thought this symbol was farther in the distance, but it seems like it's quite nearby right here, and I'm not sure what these people are doing here, but they seem to be heavily invested in this glowing little pillar. So here we switch over to gameplay. Now, what I can see already, just from this one screenshot, I see DLSS upscaling artifacting, and you can see that in the hair. It's very visible if you boot up your Pokemon Scarlet and Violet for the Switch 2. You'll see upscale artifacting on the hair. As you move the camera around, you tend to see a trail of pixels as the upscaler is trying to figure out how it's supposed to fill in the blanks. I can see artifacting here on the hair itself. So this game is rendering at a lower internal resolution, and then it's relying on the DLSS to upscale the image. I'm pretty confident that's what we're seeing, but it's only a heavily compressed YouTube video, isn't it? So we'll have to see more. It's something that's also visible on Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth. So boot that up if you don't have the game. Check out the demo. You can see the upscale artifacting is very present on Cloud's hair. As you move the camera around, you see it looks pixely and noisy and messy, and it's not something that we would see if there weren't upscaling. So something I noticed is this person is much bigger than this person, but this person has a big sword. And here's the thing. I really like big swords, okay? I grew up with Final Fantasy VII, and it was my first situation of a guy with just a giant sword. And I hadn't seen sword animes up until that point, right? I'm huge into anime, but Final Fantasy VII was my first introduction to just a big old sword. And so, you know what? When I see a big... I hadn't seen Berserk up until that point either. When I see Berserk, or, you know, Cloud's Buster Sword, it's just like, I like this. I can't ever get tired of this. So when I see a character with just a massive sword, this guy's posing hard. There appears to be some protrusion on the upper section of his staff here. I'm not sure what this is for. I don't know if that has any significance, but it certainly makes it look more interesting. We have this sort of winding as we go up this staff here that makes it look interesting. It's has a different color to it. It makes the weapon look more interesting. Now, there's a concept when it comes to visual design and visual communication. Visual complexity tends to make things look more powerful and more interesting. Okay, this is like a... Oh, interesting. Okay, have a look at this. So I noticed the hair did actually clip into the body on this character here. So have a look at the hair. So we use physics simulation. There's no such thing as physics in video games, right? There's no such thing. We are able to perform mathematical computations so that we can show you, the viewer, the player, a visual approximation of what physics would be were it to exist. But physics don't exist in video games. They're all just a visual representation through mathematical computation. We have to have colliders in the body. So just an invisible hitbox in the body parts so that the hair can hit that collision box, and then the hair knows, oh, I'm not supposed to go into the body, I'll go around it, right? That's for the mathematical computation. But if we take a look here, the hair will clip into the body. So let's see. There, it went into the body. So I'm not sure why it is doing that. For me personally, I would have put a very big collider box. We use capsules generally because it tends to match the shape of a body quite well. It's just a cylinder with rounded hemispheres on either end. I would have put a capsule on the torso here, the upper part of the torso, and then I would have put a capsule here on the shoulders, but I would have extended upward. So I'd have that capsule extend up a bit because your body, your upper torso is not a perfect capsule, but you can make it fit. Sometimes you'll need two capsules, one with a smaller radius up top here, and then with the larger radius as you get a little bit lower down. But I would have put one there and there. So, you know, for the hair, you also have to put colliders on the face. I would use a sphere and then a capsule collider on the neck. So I'm not sure why the hair is clipped into the body there, but that's, for me, something, if I were rigging a character's physics simulation, I would have taken great care to make sure that doesn't happen. Because to me as a gamer, not as a developer, not as an artist, as a gamer, when I look at that, it ruins the illusion for me. It totally destroys immersion. If my character, I can accept magic, dragons, triple backflips. I can accept that, right? A standing triple backflip, I can accept. But when I see hair clip into a body, there's no reason why that should be happening. There's no explanation for that in terms of the internal logic. So that really irritates me as a gamer when I see that. Okay. I do like this big old thing. So these characters are really, there's so many different materials going on here, and these characters are layered that just make them look really interesting. What a fun little Warhammer here. Not Warhammer the series, Warhammer this thing. So there appear to be bodies strewn about. I think there's like a, oh, you know what? We can kind of see, have a look at this image, this part of the image here. It's kind of, the DLSS is kind of giving way because this is kind of a lower resolution. So what I think this is employing is a depth of field. It's a full screen shader or post-processing shader. So the whole scene is rendered, and then we render it again. We take into account, oh, we want to make the background blurred. It's called depth of field, and it's a photographic technique. It's something that occurs in photography. And that is quite computationally expensive. Not in terms of money, but in terms of your hardware processing. So trying to make things blurry in the background has a very high performance cost. It makes the frame rate drop. So what we can do as developers is we can make those post-processing effects, we can render those out in lower resolution. I think that's what we're seeing here. And so the depth of field kind of looks like it's running at a low resolution because it's lower quality. But take into account, if they're doing that, I think it's a very wise decision. Because otherwise the frame rate running on the Switch 2 is going to chug. It's going to really heavily impact that. What I would do is increase the amount of blurring, because to me, it doesn't necessarily look like depth of field. It looks like it's running at a lower resolution, which is pretty unpleasant on the eye. I think that it looks like it's a heavily compressed JPEG, you know what I mean? But when you look here, it's nice and sharp and crisp, and that's what we care about. You know, the foreground focus, what we're meant to pay attention to. I know I'm hyper-focusing on things that super don't matter. But then a scene like this looks significantly better. Things are a bit more in focus. So I think that what we saw just in that artifacting really comes down to either the YouTube compression just sucks, because games always look better when they're not in a YouTube video. That's just how it is. I have suspicions that this geometry here is, I think this is terrain based, and I think we are viewing this, the terrain resolution is at a lower, it's a lower resolution than you would have seen on other platforms. I don't know what other platforms this is on, you know, like PC or whatnot. I think these rocks would have been smoother. Generally, for the terrain, we use height maps because it's a very fast way to manage and create our terrains, and it has really high workflow sustainability. The work that you have to put in order to create the assets is what determines your sustainability, and being able to use a height map to create your terrains results in a very high sustainability. You want high sustainability. Guys, very quickly, I don't take sponsorships. I believe that it's disingenuous for me. I'm here to hang out with you guys. I'm not trying to be like an influencer or a YouTuber. So I'm not going to ask you to do anything like or subscribe or go to my Patreon. But I do want to ask from you is if you like just cool ambient music to vibe to. There's a viewer of this channel, because I like hanging out with you guys. I like to hear from you. I like to learn about you and what you're up to. There's a viewer, Simone Noir, criminally undersubscribed. 35 subscribers is insane to me. So Simone uploads regularly, and if you guys are like, you know, you're at work at your desk, or you're just around the house doing stuff, you know, you're working on your projects, or if you're writing and you need music with like this really incredible, fantastic vibe, check out Simone's channel. I'm going to put the link in the description. Check this out. You know, I don't take sponsorships. I don't believe in that, because that's not what I want our relationship to be. But I am interested in your projects and what you're working on. Check out Simone's YouTube channel. This music is so good. I really like it. You know, and I'm a big fan of Silent Hill. You know, that kind of dark music that's just like, that has that late night vibe to it. So I really enjoy listening to Simone's channel, and it looks like Simone covered one of my songs actually the other day, so I'm gonna check it out and talk about that later. So what we're doing is, I think we're rendering that terrain in lower resolution, because you see how blocky and pointy and sharp it is. Generally that cuts down on the memory usage. I think the Switch 2 has 12 gigawatts of memory. And when you load textures in, it's stored into RAM. And so there's a sharpness and an angularity here. I think this is a performance and a memory consideration for the Switch 2 version here. I do like these particle effects, and the particle effects are quite high resolution. Now, the thing about particle effects, these are frame by frame, so each frame has to be stored in memory. And that can take up a huge amount of your memory, because these are quite high resolution, and the special effects are pretty important, right? So I think it's interesting to see the trade-offs in that. Okay, well, we'll cut down on the terrain resolution for the height maps or whatever it is so that we can have higher resolution textures on the characters and on the foliage and on the particle effect textures. And there's a lot of particle effect textures. We are always very close to the characters and we see them. And then there's the weapons, of course. You know, there's so many textures involved. Generally, a material is applied to a piece of geometry, and a material consists of multiple image files. You will have your albedo, which determines your color, or you're just basically what it looks like, the color, the visuals. That's the main texture. That's the most important one. You have the normal map, which makes things look bumpy. You have the specularity, which determines how shiny it is. You can have an emission map that makes it look like it's giving off light. You have an ambient occlusion, which darkens certain parts of the texture. For me personally, I've been actually saving myself a bit of memory by just baking the ambient occlusion into the albedo map, which means I don't need the albedo map. So it's easier on the shader. There's less computing, and then you have less memory taken up in your RAM, and then you have less storage size. So that's what I've been doing as a developer. That's a solution I've thought of, is just I'll bake the ambient occlusion, and then we don't need to have it processed in real time. Okay. Wolverine. Hey, bub. Yeah. Always got like a Winter Soldier mask. It's a cool, nice leather armor, but you know, this looks like a starting kind of character. Again, I bring back the concept of visual complexity and detailed density. Visual complexity, detailed density. I want to ask you, and you can answer, you know, if you want, or in your brain. You use your mind palace. You can answer in your mind palace. Do you think this character looks detailed dense? Do you think this character has high visual complexity? You can pause here. I'll let you pause. And the answer is no. This character does not have high detailed density. You can see there's large areas where there is not a lot amount of detail, and the visual complexity is quite low, and that makes the character, you know, not look as strong. And it's good for, you need to keep that in mind for your starting equipment and your characters. Something like, you know, that samurai armor looks more detailed dense. Whoa, cool creatures. I'm gonna try and speed things up here because I'm taking so long analyzing, you know, the smallest details. But this is cool. I really like this creature design. Have a look at this, you know, the toe that's kind of off a little bit, and gnarled fingers that looks kind of like rotting flesh. Very cool. I like the bone protrusions on the back, but he is wielding a weapon. Oh, creepy. He's got like human teeth. Always dig that on a monster. So I don't know if these are, what are these supposed to be, but they are cool monsters. I believe that the foliage here, they are using a simpler shader than on other versions of the game. Other versions of the game have higher complexity shaders, but the more complex a shader is, then the more performance cost there is. So I think they're using a simpler shader. A shader is simply a part of the program that tells the game engine how a piece of geometry should be drawn or rendered. A lot of detail in the environment. So I'm going to rank this guy's archery form here. So let's go ahead and just watch him shoot this here. I help run an archery club. I teach archery. Let's go ahead and look at his archery form. So he shoots, whoa, one frame went from there to there. So he's got a dynamic follow through that goes back. Let's go ahead and watch where he goes. I'm not a big fan of the arrow hand follow through. Let's see, but you know what? The bow hand follow through is decent enough. Generally, you want to hold the bow and keep it as absolutely still as possible. Now that I'm seeing, I thought he was shooting it on the right side, but he's shooting it on the left-hand side. No, I have to rank this a D. No, I'll give it a C. The problem is, have a look at the bow hand here. As he shoots that bow, look where it ends up. So the next frame, the absolute next frame, the bow already has kicked off to the side, but look at what the arrow is. The arrow comes here, which means the bow itself is actually clipping through the arrow. If you were to shoot like that in real life, what he's doing is he's moving the bow. That's bad. What is good is holding the bow in place. You release the arrow, and then the arrow travels past the bow. What this character done is he's kicked the bow off to the side. Realistically, what that actually would do is it would push the arrow, and it would randomly, this arrow would not be traveling here. This arrow should be traveling over there because that's where the bow has kicked. He's also flourished way, way out to the side. Now, follow through, if you follow through with a straight line like that, that's a decent follow through, or you can have a static follow through where you let go of the string and your hand stays there. D. My ranking on this archery form is D. This is bad archery form. This is not good, but it looks cool. It looks cool, so who gives a shit, right? There we go. My ranking is D, but it's D for duh, who gives a shit. All right, looks like there are some sneak mechanics here. I'm just going to let it play now, but this looks so cool to me. He says, what a cool monster! I said I was going to let it play, but I actually really like what I'm seeing here. I think that they've done a very good job optimizing this because this looks like it's running well. I can see where they've had performance improvements over their early trailers. I believe that they have reduced the accuracy of their physics simulation when it comes to things like clothing and hair, because we do see a fair bit of clipping. Earlier in the trailer, I forgot to point out, I saw a knee going through some of the garments. So I believe that there is less accurate physics simulation. That's probably to save on the CPU. Generally, it's calculated on the CPU. The hair, you can see, is lower poly count. We see these harsh angles bending here. I'm not bothered by that. Totally 100%. I can accept that if it means that the game will run better on the Switch too. Ooh, in the distance, we can actually see quite far in the distance with those particles. So this here looks like it's running at quite higher internal resolution because we see the individual particles there. But if we take a look here, those are not 3D models, those are 2D billboards. And that is a level of detail system. So the farther away the foliage gets from the camera, then we can have simpler geometry, because if we draw the highest quality geometry that has the most polygons, it has a heavy, heavy cost on the performance. And so we generally have billboards because at that distance, you can't tell if something has 3D depth or not for the most part. But the problem with that is then they look like cardboard cutouts when they're in the distance. How you can fix that, or not fix it, but hide it, is to have depth of field blur. Even if it's not heavy, just very light. If you blur the edges on that, it masks out. It conceals the fact that it is a cardboard cutout. It's a magic trick. Much of game development is a magic trick. You know, it's an illusion. None of this is real. None of this exists. We're just conveying the idea of something to you, whether it is a text adventure or not. You know, ooh, what I notice here is we have sort of a screen space ambient occlusion here. You see the trees, they're kind of close to that wall, and it looks like there's a darkening there as it gets close to the wall. We see it there as well. There's a difference between shadows, because if you have a look at the shadows being cast here, shadows are being cast straight down. Screen space ambient occlusion just makes things look more interesting it breaks a visual line and it adds more contrast. Okay, I'm just gonna let it play now. There's way more going on here than I thought. Oh, we're already at the end. I am 100% into this. Whatever this character is, this is the class that I want because it looks like we can summon, and I'm all about just like summoning a bunch of dudes, letting your dudes do stuff. That looks cool to me. That's what I like. Anyway, it looks like there's going to be some degree of multiplayer. I believe I've discussed Elden Ring Tarnished Edition on other episodes on my channel, but it was a few months back. But this looks really, I think this looks fantastic. I think the trade-offs are warranted and well considered. I believe that the developers are doing what they can to optimize this game to make it run well. This has been so interesting to me. So thanks very much for spending some time and checking out Elden Ring, and check that out. Take care of yourselves, everyone. I will see you around, and we'll see what else we get to see from the Elden Ring Tarnished Edition. Okay, be well. See you.